Hi, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thank you for joining us. The latest CBS News Battleground Tracker shows Joe Biden leading among Hispanic voters. More than 70% of Latinx voters nationwide intend to vote for him. The poll found a motivating factor was the view that Biden cares more about the pandemic's risk to their communities. However, former 2020 Democratic candidate Julián Castro is warning the party may win in November, but could see a, quote, potential slide of Latino support in the future. He made those comments in a recent Axios interview on HBO.
I saw this very clearly, that the Latino community too oftentimes is invisible. It's an afterthought, even though it's going to be the largest non-white voting group in 2020 in every way in American society, in the media, in Hollywood, in many professions. There's this image of the Latino community as though everybody got here 5 minutes ago.
And former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julián Castro, joins me now. It's good to have you with us, Secretary. So for the first time in history, Latinx voters will be the largest non-white demographic in the 2020 election. We know that all Hispanics don't vote the same way, and we should never consider one voting bloc or one demographic group a voting bloc, rather. But what's the message that the Hispanic community really needs to hear from Democrats during this national convention?
I think the message is that after 4 years of a president who only believes in opportunity for people who look like him and have a wallet as big as his, Joe Biden is someone who champions opportunity for everybody, who has a track record of expanding opportunity for every single person in this country, and has the goods to prove it, expanding health care with the Affordable Care Act. 4 million Hispanics were able to benefit from that. Championing housing opportunity, educational opportunity, raising the minimum wage is one of the things he wants to do if he's elected. So all of these things, I think, resonate deeply, along with turning away from the cruelty of Donald Trump's treatment of immigrants to a common sense, reasonable immigration system, and one that has compassion in it.
Well, several prominent voices are criticizing the lack of representation during this year's DNC. The official schedule of the convention lists only 3 prominent Hispanic speakers. You delivered the keynote speech at the 2012 convention. And this year, you'll be speaking on a panel with other 2020 presidential candidates. However, some other presidential contenders will also be speaking during the primetime event, and there really has been a fair amount of criticism. So I ask you if you think that Democrats are actually doing enough to include Latinos.
Yeah, well, last week they announced who was going to be speaking in primetime, and at that time, there were 35 speakers in primetime, and only 3 of them were Latinas or Latinos. And no Muslim Americans, no Native Americans. And I said, look, this doesn't reflect the beautiful, diverse coalition that Democrats have won with over the last several years, especially in 2018, the big wins that we had that were powered by this diverse coalition. Over the weekend, the DNC did add some participants, and we saw that in the first 2 nights. I'd be lying if I said that I don't still think there's progress to be made, because there should be more diverse voices there. But what's most important is that in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we have 2 people who have a strong track record with the Latino community. They have delivered on educational opportunity, improving healthcare opportunity, on immigration, so many different ways. It's night and day compared to Donald Trump, that has been the most cruel-hearted and ill-intentioned when it comes to the Latino community in the United States.
Well, as you brought up Senator Kamala Harris, I want to ask you about her a bit. You've been with her on the presidential debate stage. What do you make of Joe Biden's pick for vice president? And given that she is the daughter of immigrants, is there a commonality that could help boost her appeal among Latino voters?
I'm excited to hear from Senator Harris tonight. I think she's going to knock it out of the park. I mean, her story is an immigrant's American dream story that people of all different backgrounds in this country understand. They can, relate to. I think it's going to resonate tremendously tonight. Just as importantly, she has a track record of actually getting things done. And she's been working on the Senate at expanding opportunity for everybody in this country. So I think she's going to have a great chance tonight to introduce herself to a lot of folks who may not know her as well. The Kamala Harris that I saw on the campaign trail is a brilliant, dynamic, personable individual who America, I know, is going to love the more and more they get to know her.
Secretary, earlier I was talking about the roll call last night and everybody's favorite states. I'm going to guess at what your favorite state was, but you can go ahead and confirm that suspicion for me.
Well, look, I'm a Texan by birth and by choice as well. I moved back after college and law school. Texas. And I was really happy to see Congresswoman Veronica Escobar out in El Paso to, do the roll call for us. That was a great, I think people were saying, and I agree with this is one portion of the convention that was actually better in this virtual version of it than it is when you're on the floor of the convention and it's just people all crowded onto the floor of the convention and you can hardly hear anybody. This gave folks an opportunity to showcase some of the character, and the beauty of their state that they're from. And everybody's making a big deal out of Rhode Island and their calamari. But it gives you a sense of, at a time when we've been too polarized and this president has done everything that he can to be divisive and chaotic, it was beautiful to see that diversity actually can be our strength and something that makes this nation special. That little moment.
I thought.
Of convention
I was going to say. It was great, though I felt like Texas, you have a lot of good culinary offerings. You could have challenged with some ribs or some Tex-Mex. But speaking of Texas, Biden has, in fact, made significant gains in your state, which is being considered a swing state in 2020. It's still obviously leaning towards President Trump, but this is surprising for a lot of folks. Texas last backed a Democratic candidate for president in 1976 when President Jimmy Carter defeated Republican Gerald Ford. What are your predictions for Texas, and how would you advise Biden and Harris in terms of how they could actually win the state in November?
Texas is a swing state in 2020. It's totally up for grabs. What you see in the polling oftentimes is that the candidates are tied. They're within the margin of error. And what that means for an incumbent, for Donald Trump, is that he's really could be in trouble. And two things are happening. Number one, during the Donald Trump era, people all over the suburbs of Texas and other places are turning away from the Republican Party. And so in 2018, for instance, Democrats took back 2 congressional seats in suburban Dallas-Fort Worth and in the Houston area that used to be held by Republicans, 12 state House seats, a lot of them in the swing areas that used to be Republican, and 2 state Senate seats that used to be Republican. And that progress continues. And so my advice to Vice President Biden and to the DNC is invest in Texas. 38 electoral votes. It's right there on the cusp. You showed the numbers, and those numbers are reflected in other polls as well. It is very real. You get Texas, and it's game over for the Republicans. They got nowhere to go.
All right, Secretary Julián Castro, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.